Welcome to the very first episode of the Code podcast. I'm your host, Marilyn McIntyre, and the aim of this podcast is to provide practical insights to listeners seeking to understand more about the law of the Catholic Church. Through conversations with canon lawyers, we'll go through a range of topics in the field of canon law, such as governance, annulments, advocacy, clergy, religious, and much more. And these guests will share their insights. My first guest is an esteemed civil lawyer and canon lawyer who has many years' experience working in both areas, Dr. Michael Mazza. Dr. Mazza, welcome to the Code.
Hello, greetings.
Thank you so
Thanks for
much
inviting me.
thanks for taking the time to be here. I really appreciate it. So, Dr. Mazza, I was hoping to ask you a bit about how you came to studying canon law, the journey that got you there, and I believe you're working in advocacy for clergy. So
That's
what
right.
started that off?
No, I'd be happy to talk about that, and I want to thank you for the invitation, and thank you for your work here in trying to spread the good news about the law of the church, because that's exactly what it is. It's good news, and it's very important for the life of the church. Um, that actually relates to my decision to do this because I feel it's a call. Um, that I prayerfully discerned with my wife. I did not start out life as a canon lawyer. I uh, started as a catechist, actually worked in the church for about 10 years in various aspects of catechesis. So at the parish level, youth minister, director of religious education, high school teacher, and then I worked as a diocesan director of religious education. But after about 10 years or so, I moved into civil law and went to a law school here in the States. And I practiced law in many different areas, but primarily in securities law, which are, like sophisticated financial instruments. And so after I did that for almost 20 years, my wife and I were discerning, what next in retirement. And I really wanted to go back to serving the church in a more direct way. And I realized that canon law was very important for the life of the church, especially these days in the United States with the culture that exists of um, accusation and of against priests. And my concern was that they weren't getting enough due process as the law required. So after a lot of prayerful discernment and spiritual direction, retreats, even a pilgrimage to England and to Rome, I decided to leave my job and go to Rome to study canon law and embark on this apostolate of advocacy for accused priests.
So when you made that decision to quit your job and go to Rome and study, was there a sense of peace that came with that decision?
There was a lot of anxiety and peace,
Mhm.
as I suppose, happens with every big decision.
Mhm.
But I did follow here. Today is the Feast of St. James, but in a few days we're going to celebrate the Feast of St. Ignatius. And I followed good St. Ignatius's rules of discernment, and that was of immense help in making this big decision. But and the Lord didn't have to give me any consolations at all for going down this path, but I have received many because it's become very obvious to me that this work is very needed, and that
Absolutely.
I've been able to help in a lot of good ways. So I'm very grateful for that.
That's wonderful. And what areas of canon law do you specialize in?
There's so many different areas, and I get calls all the time from all kinds of people looking for all different manner of help. Um, what I have focused on, and again, this relates to my initial inkling here, is the rights of accused priests. But now it's even stretching to the rights of accused lay people because the environment is such that there's so much fear of bad publicity or lawsuits or whatever that people are being let go of their positions, even in the church, even if they're lay, at the drop of a hat. At the minute that there's an accusation, there's no due process, and people are just let go. And that's where I've been helping, primarily with priests, but even now with lay people.
So you were saying there's a lack of due process when it comes to accused clergy and even lay people. What does that look like, and how do you, in that work, uphold the rights and the dignity of the client that you're defending?
Sure. It's interesting because the phrase due process is really used in English. When I was studying in Rome, I would be talking about due process with my English speaking friends, or I'd be searching for ways to translate the words due process into Italian, um, or even Latin, and they don't really have it. It's just process. It's processo, or processus. So the fact that it's, due process means essentially, and the roots of due process are very old, and we have another nice conversation about that sometime if you want. But it's a process that is due a human being because of his or her dignity. Made in the image and likeness of God, we have rights and duties that need to be respected and fulfilled. And so this just is part and parcel of any human community, and it's very important in the life of the church. So when someone gets accused of something, I mean, the church needs to take into account all the rights and duties. So, for example, we don't want people in positions of trust who are hurting other people.
Of course.
Absolutely. So if there is an accusation against someone, it needs to be sorted through. And if the person is represents some kind of harm, um, then steps need to be taken. Or maybe it's even more subtle. Maybe somebody is accused, and we, the community, are worried that that person who's accused is going to be so angry that he or she is going to take it out on the accuser or on the witnesses or whatever. Really separate and apart from anything that may or may not have happened. So we want to, again, be careful about the community, and we want to make sure that that doesn't happen. So there are all kinds of reasonable restrictions that can be imposed on somebody, reasonable steps that can be taken to ensure the goods of the community. And at the same time, we need to understand that every human being has a right to the presumption of innocence and has the right to his or her good name. Those are precious goods that weren't invented recently. They are not bestowed on us by some kind of authority, human authority. They're given to us by God by virtue of our human dignity being made in His image and likeness. And this all comes through very loud and clear through the teachings of not only the Second Vatican Council, but the popes really in the 20th century who talked about these kinds of things. And so it's very important to pay attention to the demands of due process, lest there's really chaos and arbitrary, capricious exercises of authority, which are very damaging to the church and to the people in it, and to our mission of bringing the good news to the world. So it's something that really needs to be attended to.
No, absolutely. And clearly you are attending to it because you're working independently as an advocate, I believe.
That's right. Yeah, I've had really, it's been crazy lately. The number of phone calls that I've received and emails, texts from people who need help, and they need help really right away. It's a very stressful situation for these people who get accused. I mean, sometimes they may be called into an office and they said, you know, we've had an accusation against you and you need to leave right now. We're going to keep your laptop or whatever, and we're just going to escort you to the door.
So it's very
Well, that's,
immediate. It's just
oh,
right then and there.
it's very, very stressful. Or, some announcement is made at the weekend masses. Father is going away. Well, people obviously are going to ask, well, why? Is he sick? Is he taking care of his mom? Well, and then what's very important is what follows, right? If you say, well, he's been accused of, a horrible crime committed against a child. Well, that's, that's kind of the end of the world for this guy because people could jump to conclusions. I wanted to bring that up too with respect to due process. It's on what basis do we make decisions? This is what's important. So when we say that there's due process that's required, it means what are the steps that are taken before someone makes a judgment? And this is why we have standards of proof, um, really just in ordinary life, but particularly in juridical settings. We have special standards of proof that we must reach before we take certain kinds of action. And this is all so obvious in civil society. And it's frankly, it's been lost to some degree, I think, in the last 20 years, especially in the States, especially after the news broke 20 some years ago about the horrible crisis that was in the church, um, 70s, 80s, and 90s, when real abusers were really not treated the way that they should have been treated under the law, which is to say they need to be removed. We knew what they had done, and yet because of a perhaps misguided reliance on the advice of psychological so-called experts, and certainly a desire not to follow the law because it was viewed as too harsh. The penal law of the Catholic Church was considered by many to be kind of an unfortunate uh, aspect of the church's history. And why do we really need it? Why can't we just all get along?
So
So go ahead.
for those who don't know what penal law is, what part of the church is that relating to?
Yeah, we have it in any society where we say look, people are always going to sin. There are always going to be, shortcomings in human relationships. But some of those quote unquote shortcomings are so bad that they need to be punished. And that's where we get this notion of penal law or criminal law that, you do certain things, you commit vandalism, you steal money, you kill someone, you're going to have to pay a punishment for that, which generally means some kind of incarceration. And it's not just to protect the society, which is true, but it also is a sign that to everyone, you can't do that uh, and get away with it because you've harmed society. Sure, you've harmed a particular person by stealing something or robbing him or her of his life, but in addition, you've harmed society. Well, we have the same thing in the church. There are certain sins that are so egregious that they're actually considered to be crimes, and they need to be punished accordingly. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about penal law.
So from when you get the phone call from a priest
Mhm.
to say what's happened, what does the process then look like from there for you as the advocate and then for the priest as your client?
The first thing is to attend to the person as a human being. So, you know, are you praying? Father, let's pray because this is obviously very stressful. And I usually ask him to lead a little prayer. And that is immensely consoling to him because sometimes these guys are afraid of of even thinking themselves as a priest. They've been told, don't hold yourself out as a priest. Some guys have said, Michael, can I introduce myself as Father, Father
Wow.
Smith, because I've been told,
Gosh,
that I can't
that's so
wear
sad.
clerics. Oh, it's excruciating. And some of these guys are 60, 70, 80 uh, more years old, and they've been used to being called father their entire lives. The only clothes they have in their closet are
Mm.
clerics, other than you know, the suit they wore to their high school homecoming dance, which doesn't fit anymore.
It must
Um,
be so shocking to them
oh,
to then be in that position.
yeah, it's really rough. And so we pray, and then kind of get a sense of what's going on. And I am always aware that I might be getting less than half of the story, and a lot of it might not be accurate. There's a lot of defensive mechanisms that people use. So some of the people that I talk with, really did either commit a misstep or really do something bad. And some of the people I speak with are just totally innocent, and they were caught up in some bogus, lawsuit that's somebody sees money that the church is handing out, uh, and they get caught up in an old lawsuit. So I see all different kinds of situations, and it takes a great deal of prayer and discernment to get at the truth. And I'm not implying by any means that, I have a crystal ball, or that I know immediately
Of
when
course
someone is
not.
lying or anything like
Mm.
that. But you do have to take these steps
Of course.
to take care of the person, and then to make sure that their rights are respected, and that they themselves are fulfilling their duties.
So, as part of taking care of the person, you said that you address them first as a human being. What support structures in terms of a psychological support or pastoral support is in place for clergy going through this
That's
process?
an excellent question, Marilyn. I would say, and the answer to a lot of questions is, for a lawyer anyway, is it depends. Depends. Uh, it does depend on the diocese or the religious order that the person is with. Um, Regrettably, many situations have zero pastoral care
Really?
for the accused person. It may be stated in some document somewhere, but in reality, there is just nothing given. And it gets even worse than that, because in the present environment, there are many times when a priest, an accused person, is completely left alone, because his brothers look upon him as, boy, that's unfortunate. Hope it doesn't happen to me. And they, many times, tend to ignore him.
Really? So
Uh,
completely left alone,
mhm.
meaning there is absolutely no one who would want to associate with this
Correct.
priest.
And a lot of times priests are told, you can't come to clergy days. You don't come to the meeting, the annual meeting or the biannual meeting where all the priests of the diocese get together for formation talks, or, socialization or whatever. You can't come to that. Well, okay. Uh, Not sure why, but it definitely leaves a mark on this poor guy. Um, or if he goes, he's just kind of left alone because he's under a cloud. Um,
So it
and
sounds like
so
they're
um,
immediately isolated.
that is a very high risk. And so one of the things that I say when I give talks to priests about their rights and duties is that I urge them, if they have a friend who gets accused, reach out to that person as a human being, as a, a brother, as a fellow priest, because they need that. There are a lot of men that I speak with who are extremely desperate, and that is a very sad thing.
So over the years that you've been doing this work, you mentioned just then that you encourage priests to reach out to their brother priests. when they're going through this. Have you seen a shift at all in that culture of clergy reaching out to others?
I have. I've seen some very encouraging signs, and that is, again, largely dependent on the particular religious order or the diocese in which person finds himself. As with many situations, when it happens to you, you become much more sensitive. And so the I think there's a growing sense in, especially in the States, that people who are accused need outreach. And there was a recent survey of priest morale that was conducted by some sociologists at Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C. And it came out, I believe it was October of 2022. It was kind of a shocking assessment of how priests are doing. And while there were many positive signs, they love their work. They are also very afraid of being falsely accused. This is north of 80%, basically on a regular basis, strongly fear being falsely accused. And that's it's not a good way to run
No, not at
a,
all.
a mission as important
No.
as ours in the
Yeah.
church.
Are there any not-for-profit organizations or outreach organizations that are put in place in America for clergy going through an experience like this?
There's one that I know of for sure. It's called Men of Melchizedek. They have a website, and they exist to help priests in crisis. And so even the title reminds these men that they are priests forever according to the order of Melchizedek. Frankly, even if they return to the lay state involuntarily or voluntarily, they're still a priest. They can still hear a confession in the danger of death. Um, that's never going to be taken away. Now, their right to function as a priest publicly could be taken away if they've been guilty, been found guilty of a horrible crime. Um, but uh, in any event, they are priests, and Men of Melchizedek exists to help priests in crisis. So I'd encourage your listeners to go to their website and read about their important mission because they're doing great work. But it's all lay and it is all independent.
That's really wonderful.
Yeah, it's
That's
a
great
great
to hear.
great place. And Joe Maher is the president, and he's doing great work.
That's really great. So, speaking of lay people, we'll probably switch to yourself now as the advocate, and this is the
Mhm.
work that you do. It's quite heavy content that you'd be dealing with on a regular basis. And I imagine it's quite important for a canon lawyer to have an interior spiritual life. Um, how would you describe you going about praying with your clients
Sure.
and
No,
and
I'm
any
I'm glad.
saints or scripture that guide and assist you in your work?
I'm very glad you brought that up because that is absolutely fundamental. Um, we need to stay close to Christ because this is His church, and we participate in the little garden plot that He's entrusted to us only with His grace and with the help of His Blessed Mother. And so there are no illusions about the efficacy of our own efforts, separate and apart from grace. So I would advise anyone who is doing anything like this um, to pray uh, daily. I mean, the divine office contains these psalms that the church has been praying for centuries, and they're Old Testament psalms, so they go back even farther. But they echo people who are going through all kinds of things: joy, sorrow, trial. And that is a great source of inspiration because you see all these things in context then. I mean, this is one of the things, Marilyn, that I do tell the clients on a regular basis is, and this might sound harsh, but well, you're not the first one to be falsely accused, and you're not the last. So basically, buck up. You know, realize this that you're not alone. And initially, I would imagine that someone like, well, don't you know that I'm special, or this really hurts? And yes, absolutely. But you got to see this thing in its proper perspective. And God is allowing this evil for some greater good. You know, maybe you're too big for your britches. Maybe he sees that you are the perfect person to be able to handle this burden with his help. Um, in any event, you need to pray. You can never stop praying. Absolutely the Psalms, absolutely Mass, absolutely the Rosary, absolutely adoration from the Blessed Sacrament, where you just look at the Lord and you say, you went through infinite infinitely more pain and suffering than any of us. But you did it anyway for love of us. And so please help me to get through this. So that's essential. And you talk about saints. I mean, good gravy. There's so many saints that we can turn to for help in this. I mean, and thank God we're Catholic, because every single day you look at the calendar and there's somebody else that you can turn to for help. And there have been a number of saints who have been accused uh, falsely, um, and we can turn to them for help because they got through it, and we just have to keep our eyes fixed on the day when it will be all made right, and that is it's a great source of hope.
Well, that's a really perfect way to wrap up this first episode, Dr. Mazza. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat to me, particularly about advocacy, penal law, and advocating for accused clergy within the church. For those of you listening, I hope this has been an insightful episode for you. Please subscribe and follow the podcast. In the description, I'll pop the details for the website Men for Melchizedek, as Dr. Matzer had mentioned. And stay tuned. There'll be some more episode in the coming weeks. Thank you again, Dr. Matzer. God bless.
Thank you, Marion. God bless.
Glory.